biggest, fastest, or strongest animals around, we are the best at something. The human body is everything that makes us up. To understand this, let's dive in. What is anatomy and physiology? Anatomy is about the study of the structure and relationships between the body parts, while physiology is the study of how the structure come together or function and keep the body alive. As we move forward to level of structural organization, the anatomy and physiology is all about the essence of the things that we spend every single of time thinking about are the things that we're not trying to think about. Levels of structural organization. What are these levels of structural organization? The 6 levels of structural organization, in which the key purpose of what the structure can do depends on what is their specific forms for every level, from atoms, cells, tissues, organs to system. This all begins with the smallest of the smallest, which are the atoms. For the next level, from the chemistry of atoms and molecules includes the smallest unit of living things and often referred to as building blocks of life, which is the cell. Cells have some basic functions in common. However, they vary widely in size and shape. One good example for this is the red blood cell. Cell groups with similar cells form the next level of organization, which refers to the tissue such as connective membranes, nervous, and muscle tissues. When 2 or more tissue types combine, which in turn are arranged in a specific way, it forms the organs such as heart, lungs, brain, liver, and etc. That performs a specific function to keep the body running. As the organs work together and integrate to get things done, forming the organ system, in which it is a group of organs that performs a specific function for the body. Lastly, all of those levels combine together, which it forms the highest level of organization, which is the body itself. Before digging into other topics that will be covered for this chapter, let us give you a glimpse of this organ system. The human body is made up of several organ systems that all work together as a unit to make sure the body keeps functioning. There are 11 major organ systems, each of which plays a different role in helping the body work, namely the integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, and the reproductive system. The organ systems do not work in isolation. Instead, they work together to promote the well-being of the entire body. Every living organism must be able to maintain its boundaries so that its inside remains distinct from the outside. The ability of all living systems to maintain stable internal conditions, no matter what changes are occurring outside the body, is called homeostasis. It is necessary for survival and good health. Our survival is going to be all about maintaining balance for both materials and energy. These survival needs to include food, oxygen, water, blood, appropriate temperature, and normal atmospheric pressure, and its loss will result to illness. Moving on, the feedback mechanism is a physiological loop that brings the body either toward or away from the normal or steady state. These pathways most commonly return the body to homeostasis. Actually, there are 2 types of feedback mechanism, namely the negative and positive feedback. The negative feedback is when a system's output acts to reduce or dampen the process that leads the output of that system, resulting in less output. The negative feedback loops permit the system to self-stabilize. Examples are homeostatic systems such as thermoregulation. If body temperature changes, mechanisms are included to restore normal life. The positive feedback is rare in the body since they tend to increase the original stimulus and to push the variable further from its original value. In positive feedback mechanism, the original stimulus is promoted instead of it. One example of positive feedback is uterine contractions during childbirth, which the hormone oxytocin is made by the endocrine system that stimulates the contraction of the uterus. Now, let's let's discuss the language of anatomy. Anatomical terminology is relative and assumes that the body is in the anatomical position. So, what do you mean by anatomical position? It is the body that is in a standard position where the body is erect with the feet parallel and the arms hanging at the sides with the palms facing forward. On the other hand, the directional terms are where one body part is in relation to another. Sectioning a body or one of its organs will result in a different view. Since the body is three-dimensional, we can refer to three types of planes or sections that lie at right angles to one another. The first one is the sagittal section. It is a cut along the longitudinal plane of the body, dividing it into right and left parts, while the median, mid-sagittal section is where the cut is down the median plane of the body, and the right and left parts are equal in size. The second one is the frontal section known as the coronal section, where a cut along the lengthwise plane divides the body or organ into anterior and posterior parts. Lastly, the transverse section, that known as a cross-section, is a cut along a horizontal plane dividing the body or organ into superior and inferior parts. There are two sets of internal body cavities, called the dorsal and ventral body cavities. But before that, let us define the body cavity. So, the body cavity is a fluid-filled space inside the body that holds and protects the internal organs. The two sets of internal body cavities provide different degrees of protection to the organs within them. The dorsal body cavity has two subdivisions, namely the cranial and spinal cavity, which are continuous with each other. The ventral body cavity is much larger than the dorsal cavity and is less protected. It contains the structures within the chest and abdomen that are visceral organs in those regions. Just like the dorsal cavity, the ventral body cavity has two subdivisions, namely the thoracic and abdominopelvic. Before we end this chapter, we got to have an overview to the things that we are going to learn for the next lesson. As we all know, they're all processes that we're about to understand through anatomy and physiology. Here is a quote from Elaine N. "We are not carelessly designed creatures. Everything about us has purpose, logic, and intelligence built into.